What is the biggest mistake you did not make as a teenager? I never joined a street gang. I was in the rare percentage of kids from my neighborhood. Despite drinking a lot, I did not drink and drive. Heroin. Getting angry and chasing a crowd of people with a wheelbarrow. Sending nudes. Found out the boys in our school had a shared email. They all had the password to where they passed around all of the nudes they got. Found out 2 of the guys I talked to who asked me for them were a part of that group. So glad I never took nudes or sent them. I was at a house party and I wasn't drunk at all. I was late to the party and had only just started. This absolute 10/10ths girl came on to me and wanted to take me upstairs to suck and fuck, but I cannot tell you how drunk she was. I really would have wanted to under any other circumstance, but the fact she was so drunk just put me really ill at ease, and I said no, and she started calling me an arsehole and that I was a cunt, etc. About a week later she added me on Facebook and apologized for calling me names and thanked me for not taking advantage of the situation. Add or subtract from population. Didn't get a girl pregnant. Pretty easy to do at an all-boys school. I never dated anyone from my school. Only girls from Canada. You wouldn't know them, of course. I'm the first woman in my family to beat teen pregnancy. Have kids catch STDs. Join gangs, get arrested, become a drug addict, drop out. Get any girl pregnant. My mom gave me the sex talk. If I got any girl pregnant, she would kick me so hard, in the thing I used to get the girl pregnant with, I would never be able to use it again. I believed her. I was asked out. I said no. He raped and murdered 2 teenage girls that same weekend. Edit. Many of you asked for more details. There honestly isn't much of a story on my end. This was over 30 years ago now. A male friend of mine called me. Steve, rapist/murder, was with said friend. I was probably 14/15 at the time. Steve got on the phone, started chatting me up and asked me out the coming weekend. I was already dating a boy who was the cousin of Steve's girlfriend Dana. I said no. That weekend, 2 days later, Steve and another guy picked up a 12 and 13-year-old. Steve raped the 12-year-old and then slit her throat, leaving her to bleed out in his bathtub. He then called out to her friend telling her that the girl he killed needed her. He then killed the other girl. His friend heard a scream, went to investigate, saw what had done and went and sat on the front porch. Steve tried to get him to help remove and dispose of the bodies, but he refused. Steve piled them into the back of his pickup and took the friend to dispose of the bodies. Friend still refused to help. Strangely, Steve took his friend home. Friend told his parents and they went to the police. Steve was arrested, charged and got 2 life sentences. To answer one of the more disturbed questions, no, I did not then, nor have I ever blamed myself. Yes, I believe he likely would have raped/murdered me that weekend if I hadn't said no, but no, I don't have survivor's guilt. And no, he didn't kill these girls because I rejected him. He just wanted to do it. Getting pregnant. I'm a guy, but I still didn't do it. Drugs. I thank my aunt for that. She popped pills like they were candy. My grandma was going to pick her up one morning, there was no answer at the door, so she went on in. She was sitting on the love seat leaning down, and my grandma thought she was just high and nodding off. She was cold and stiff and had been gone all night. My granny had a heart attack and could have passed as well. I'll never put my family through that. I know the truth about drugs. If you don't get help, you won't survive. It's a medical certainty. People who don't drink alcohol, why? 5 years ago I was diagnosed with liver failure from drinking too much. Stopped drinking and now no longer qualify for a transplant because you're no longer ill enough to require a new organ. How I did it? 1. Stopped drinking. 1. Started following liver specialist directions. 1. Recovered from jaundice that was so bad I was orange. 1. Lived in pandemic conditions a full year before the pandemic. 1. Went bankrupt from hospital bills. 1. Waited 18 months to find out I'm also anemic because blood cells are dying too quickly. 1. Supplemented with lots iron. 1. Drank only filtered water and started walking after 2 years of no energy. 1. Started medical cannabis, and serapeptase, a scar reduction enzyme. 1. Increased steps per day from 150 to 15k steps gradually, daily goal is only 7k now. 1. Feeling better than in the past 10 years, also stopped smoking cigs over a decade ago. Grew up a nerd, so didn't touch the stuff when I was young. When I was old enough to drink, I was old enough to see how many alcoholics were in my family. Finally, every doctor I've ever told I don't drink has replied good. liver. Hard liquor every night, started to see dependence setting in and stopped enjoying it, and started to interfere with work. Final straw was when I went to the hospital for severe withdrawal symptoms. I'm about 3 weeks in, not a drop, going to rehab for a month, in a couple days for a month. Wish me blessings. Long family history of people dealing and failing to control their alcohol addiction. So the best way to make sure this won't happen to me, is to avoid it as much as possible. Deleted. Cause I'm sober. For 20 years. Edit. Wow guys, thanks for all the love. I'm pulling for every one of you. It's such a different life. It's a cool place to be at 56 years old. Thank you all. I'm a 47-year-old alcoholic with 4 years sobriety. People normalize drinking way too much. I'm always scared to not feel well, and I don't like the feeling of not being able to control my thoughts very clearly. Because I'm allergic. Break out in handcuffs, misdemeanors, and felonies, you know. Edit. Thank you for all the responses, they were great and I did not expect it to blow up. In all seriousness, I've lived that life, and let me just say that it's not a life worth living. At 20 years old and 3 DUIs, life questioned me, to which I had no answer. On May 13, 2011, I decided to break the vicious cycle of alcoholism that has cursed my family for generations and has taken so many of their lives. I thank God every day that my daughters have no earthly idea what it's like to grow up in a house with an alcoholic. Sobriety is the strength of the soul, for it preserves its reason unclouded by passion. Pythagoras. Because addict. Any substances spiral real quick into all of them at once, and my life in the bin on. I don't like anything about it. Tastes awful, hate the feeling of being buzzed/drunk, despise hangovers. I find drunk people ridiculously annoying. Wastes money. Causes headaches and beer belly. Makes people unsafe drivers. I've seen how it ruined my boyfriend's life before he died. Simply not interested. I'm already mentally and physically disoriented 24/7, don't want to experience it even more. How did you almost die? Got lost in the Bolivian rainforest for 3 days after consuming tea made from angel trumpets. Deleted. Exploring tidal cliffs, accidentally slipped into the water. Went in sideways, narrowly missed hitting my head. Just barely clawed my way out of the rough tidal zone, it was way over my head and was so choppy I was being slammed against rock. Please be careful around tidal cliff zones. In the fall of '91 I was in Hawaii and dove into this blowhole in Hanauma Bay. That's not me in the video, but it's the blowhole. My buddies were doing it and it was no problem for them. The problem for me was that I was a lot bigger than them, so my lats got stuck as I was face down in the hole. The concept is you time the waves and dive in just as the water recedes and the flow pulls you through. Well, I got stuck and had to wiggle my way down, ripping up the skin on my lats and ribs. So I finally get down and I have to swim like a mofo, but it's too late, the next flow is coming in. I'm at the edge, almost there, so I have to grab onto the edge with both hands like a kidnapping victim holds the door frame so as not to be abducted. The wave cycle is not very long, but when you're doing something new and panicking, it feels like an eternity. I've heard they have closed off this portion of the bay. I know I don't need to do that again. T-boned by a cement truck. Guy at the tow yard couldn't believe I was still alive. Caught an incredibly rare fungus that attacked my lungs and would have attacked my other internal organs. Took 2 years to diagnose because it's so rare. Only patient my respirologist has ever seen with it. Dropped to almost 80 pounds. I could literally feel myself slowly dying. My mom stopped her car on the tracks when a train was coming. Thankfully, with all the screaming of the kids, she snapped out of whatever she was doing and drove off of it. Cancer stage 4. Given less than a month. That was 10 years ago. Went on a high elevation alpine hike on Mt. Rainier with an out-of-town friend. At around 10,000 feet we decided it was time to head back down the mountain. About 5 minutes into the descent I was in an uncontrolled glissade across a snowfield. Even though I knew better, after I was unable to slow myself I put my feet down. That's when my crampons bit into the snow and stopped me, sending all of the force into my legs. I heard an unsettling pop and felt excruciating pain. As soon as I stopped I looked down and saw that the heel of my left boot was where the toe should have been. I had severely broken my leg and I was at least a 3-hour hike down with sunlight, and warmth, declining. We were not equipped to be there after dark. Within a couple of minutes I could feel my extremities beginning to tingle. Was going into shock. Fortunately, I had some glucose gel packs which I began to suck on. And that seemed to keep the shock at bay. Which was a good thing because the radiating pain was quite enough. Our cell phones weren't working well, but another stroke of luck was that I had put a GMRS radio in the bottom of my pack, and as such we were able to get word out on the radio that we were in trouble and needed help. Ham radio operators heard us and relayed our position and the details to the rangers. The National Park Service couldn't get a helicopter that was willing to fly to that elevation so late in the day, on a Sunday in early October. So they had to gather a party of climbing rangers to come get me. A couple of other climbers on the way up the mountain really saved me by giving up their climb and assisting me, covering me with sleeping bags and making tea while one of them went back down the mountain to meet the rangers coming up. Shock and hypothermia very likely would have done me in that night if they hadn't happened upon us and helped. It was pitch dark and freezing cold by the time the rangers arrived 4 hours later. They strapped me into a litter and had to carry me off the mountain. Unfortunately, the climbing rangers are not EMTs and do not dispense meds. So even though they were doing all of the work on the climb down, it was absolutely excruciating for me. It was almost 9 hours between the time of the accident and the time I checked into the emergency room. Got locked in the boot of the car for about an hour during an Australian summer. I don't remember what I did, if anything, to make my mum punish me like that. I was 8 years old. Car accident when I was 12. My dad was hopped up on painkillers and driving me to Little League tryouts. He fell asleep at the wheel and went head in into a tree going about 40 on a country road. Broke my right femur, left arm, collapsed a lung, tore apart my left knee ligaments, crushed my left foot. I was in ICU for a few days in a coma, and the femur break came really close to nicking the artery and sending me off to the land of the dead. What it really killed was all of my confidence and pretty much ruined my childhood. I developed a severe anxiety disorder and became a recluse. I stopped playing sports and just stayed indoors a lot. Cancer. Fucked it off twice now. Cancer. Lost my legs though. A few weeks ago I was walking home from the grocery store late at night and noticed a homeless guy across the street looking a bit off. I wasn't sure if he was high or having mental issues or just entertaining himself. He started to cross the street diagonally towards me and had one hand stuffed in his jacket. I felt a bit uneasy about the situation, so I phoned a family member, picked up my pace, and kept looking at him to check where he was in relation to me. When my mom picked up the phone, I spoke a bit louder than usual and told her I was walking home down ABC Street. I didn't say anything about the guy, I just asked her about her day, but I wanted to be on the line with someone just in case. After a few seconds, he turned and stopped following me. Less than 12 hours later, less than 2 blocks away, someone was stabbed and nearly killed. When I saw the face of the alleged perp on the news, it was the same guy who had been following me down the street. I was pretty unnerved the day I saw that. If I were less aware of my surroundings or less trusting of my gut, who knows if it would have been me he stabbed. Double murder robbery I missed because I was doing bong rips with my ride. Ruby Tuesdays, 1998, July 4th. If I'd been on time to work that day instead of 10 minutes late, I'd be dead, too. I went in the back before the cops even secured the place. Saw too much. Miss you, Joanna, and I know your little boy is happy and healthy and with your family.